Roman Polanski is 32. He has just completed his fourth feature film, The Vampire Killers, set in the snow-covered mountains of Transylvania. He both directs and plays one of the leading parts. Roman Polanski was born in France of Polish parents. They left there when he was 3 and went to live in Poland. He talked with Boleslaw Sulik, a Polish film critic also living in London, about his work and background.
I don't know. I think I'm a nomad, you know, but I I'm really strongly attached to Polish background. I've grown up in Poland. My mother was killed by Germans very soon, and my father was taken to the concentration camp after 2 years of war, and then I was by myself in the beginning with the friends of my father, and after friends of their friends and friends of their friends, eventually with the people I didn't know, and I was living basically in the country during the war. I didn't have a family life, and when the war was finished and my father came back from Mauthausen when he was a prisoner, wanted to remarry, and I didn't want to live with them, and I'd stay by myself. So since 6, really, or 8, because first 2 years I was with my father. So since I was 8, I never stayed with my parents. I think it certainly marked me. My family was rather very unartistic, and it was rather bourgeois background, you know, not working class either. So I can't impress, you know, a journalist with this sort of information. One of the first films I've seen was Snow White, you know, and I think that influenced me enormously forever. For and I, as you see, it's enormous influence of this in my work, like Repulsion, or you know, this. During the war, there were a lot of German films in the town, and I was in Krakow, and I loved cinema. I was going to the cinema. I was selling newspapers so I could have little money to go to the cinema. Cinema was very cheap because it was all German propaganda, but I didn't understand that, you know, at this time. For me, it was just, you know, things happening on the screen, and I loved that, even if the people were telling me that I shouldn't go to the cinema, because it was, even, as you remember, you were during the war in Poland. You remember the saying "Wszystkie świnie siedzą w kinie," which means all pigs are in the cinema. I always wanted to do. I didn't know what does it exactly mean, a film director, but I always wanted. I really was trying always to build the projectors and things like that. It never worked really because I didn't know optics well enough, you know. I mean, I did finally achieve it after war, you know. But I always thought, but I never really believed I would do it. When I started, you know, going to the school, you know, I didn't have any education during the war. I hardly could read, you know. I was reading books, but I didn't. I never went to the school until I was 12 or 13 after war. But when I started, you know, going to school, I realized, you know, that it's sort of a dream which, you know, I'm not able to make real. But I started in the theater when I was 14, you know, as an actor. I didn't have such good parts because it's very rare to have, you know, rare to have a leading part when you are 14 or 15 or 16. But I stayed in the theater for 6 years. At the same time, I started studying art school, you know, because I thought I always was drawing, and you know, even as a kid, and that's what my parents really thought I should do, and I believed it. I liked it very much, and I thought that that's something which you can. I mean, you can. No, I mean, it's something real. You know, cinemas seem to be something very real, very far, and that at least I could do. So when I finished the art school, I started playing in the films, little parts. They picked me up from the theater. So I was already closer to the cinema. And eventually I said I am going to make a film school. And that was very difficult because every year they had 300 or 400 you know, young people trying to get into film school. You needed a high school finish.
I see.
That
Lodge
wasn't
Film
good for
School.
anything else, you know. I
Yes.
don't know anything about economics. There was no actor class at this time. It was only film production, film direction, and a camera.
At the Polish Film School, he found the freedom, encouragement, and resources to make short films. One of them, Two Men and a Wardrobe, won him several prizes at international festivals and established the germ of a future reputation. The precise symbolic meaning of the preposterous old wardrobe may be obscure, but the emotions conveyed are clear. Whatever it may signify, individuality, personal values, genuine private sentiments, there is no room in society for the wardrobe, although violence and callousness are quite common. Everywhere the two men meet hostility or indifference, until finally they take their wardrobe back into the sea. The film is ironic, but the images simple and innocent. In a later short film, Mammals, this time the setting is a simple snow landscape, two individuals become locked in a struggle to take advantage of one another. Each plays on the other's sympathy and sense of human obligation, with gradually increasing cunning. Polanski's work, in its freedom and anarchy, seems quite untouched by the usual Polish concerns. Most leading Polish filmmakers seem preoccupied by great national issues. The tragic history of Poland and the way it bears down on private individuals, demanding sacrifice.
I don't know, I think I was always considered in the school, especially during the Stalinist times when it
Yes.
was very dodgy. I was always considered as a cosmopolitan,
Yes.
cosmopolitan, and I was very often, you know, on the edge. I think I am cosmopolitan. I'm rather proud of it. I'm a feel very strong against everything which means nationalism
yes.
and even patriotism.
Knife in the Water was Polanski's first feature. It expands the themes of his short films. There is again an open and moody landscape, and against it a few human figures behaving strangely. The new element is sex. It is for the woman's benefit that the two men try to dominate one another in a tense, psychological game.
No, co jest, co?
Pan zdejmie śliniak. Skacz! Skacz!
Nie,
Niech pan wyłowi wiosło.
nie umiem pływać.
Niech się pan nie wygłupia.
Nie umiem pływać, mam się utopić?
Niech pan skacze.
Zostaw. Ale woda! Daj krokodyla!
Kaleczy pan pokład.
Ja to robię z czuciem.
Gdyby pan wpadł do wody, to by pan jednak popłynął.
Niech pan spróbuje.
Andrzej, krokodyl bańki puszcza!
Ja żartowałem.
Andrzej, zabierz płetwy, dobrze?
Na dole jest apteczka. Niech pan opatrzy rękę. Mam panu pomóc?
What interests me more is the, you know, psychological relationship between the people, you know, sometimes can be two men even, you know, I mean, love and sex is one of the most important part of our life. I hope
Yes.
you agree with me. So so it comes true, but it's not the basic theme of my work.
The French film magazine, Cahiers du Cinéma, said that there is an abstract intelligence at work in your films. Would you agree with that kind of statement?
Abstract in
The abstract intelligence at work.
That's very sophisticated magazine, Cahiers du Cinéma, and I hardly understand what they're talking about. I mean, when they always made me fantastic reviews. I mean, from Knife in the Water and Repulsion, but I must admit I didn't understand a word of it.
You're not interested, in fact, in that kind of criticism at all.
I'm basically very little interested in it.
Yes.
Repulsion was the first of the 3 films that Polanski has made in England. Its theme was unusual for him. It is the story of a girl going insane, haunted by her fears, and a feeling that her world is disintegrating. It is set in London, for Polanski a new and unfamiliar environment. But he was able to use his great technical skill and craftsmanship, and that quality of his imagination which makes him select the unusual, potentially symbolic features in any setting. Repulsion displays Polanski's extraordinary ability to manipulate the audience's response.
I know technique, and I have always fantastic relationship with the cameraman and all technical people because I talk the language, and I have great help from their side, especially in this country. Intuition everybody has, but not everybody knows how to express it.
Yeah,
I think I'm professional, I'm not an amateur in the cinema. I think at this stage where cinema speaks, I mean, since 1928, I think it's an important thing, and I think that we see a lot of films where the soundtrack is something just which makes noise as well as we see. But for me, the soundtrack is as important as the picture itself, I mean, as the visual side of the film. And I spent a long time on sound. I don't like cinema verite, I like rather cinema light than cinema truth, But what doesn't interest me, is it's a sort of pseudo truth about life, going out on the street and filming cars, things which you see with your own eyes if you are a little bit sensitive. I think that's just sort of digested pseudo sensitivity for bourgeois, who feels very much artistic when they see this sort of.
And you resent, in fact, bourgeois attitudes, I believe.
Yeah, very much so. I hate it because it's basically, because it's basing on hypocrisy, and bourgeois morality. It's something which they just respect because it exists, because they were grown up this way, not because they think that it's right,
This dislike of middle-class attitudes and manners comes through very clearly in Cul-de-sac, the second film that Polanski made in England.
Horace, stop that at once! What? Do you hear me? Never aim a gun at people! No! Not a gun! No!
That's my gun. Well, it was loaded.
Of course it wasn't. It was in the boot of the car.
How could he possibly have loaded it?
How did you learn it, eh? How, eh? You little... Devil, you looked after her more carefully.
What do you mean? What happened with the stained glass window?
Oh, thank goodness that's all it is.
All it is. The St. Cuthbert's stained glass window.
Well, don't make a drama out of it. We'll replace your window pane.
Window panes. The St. Cuthbert's stained glass window in the other room.
It's completely ruined. And no one's been hurt. That's the main thing.
Yes, that would have been the last straw.
Look, I'll make good the damage to your stained glass.
How could one possibly replace a St. Cuthbert's stained glass window?
Well, that's the way you're going to take it. Look, we'd better be off. We shouldn't have contacted our friends without first acquaintance. No, stop. Look, it's quite obvious we're in the way, aren't we? From the moment you set eyes on us, you had one thing in your mind, and that was to get us off this island.
Quite so. You let your filthy little brat get up to his disgusting tricks. Besides, I know perfectly well why you came. You needn't take me for a fool.
He knows why. You hear that?
I
He
know what I'm
knows
talking
why.
about. It was the same with Agnes, wasn't it?
May I ask what you're implying?
Will you kindly shut your trap?
Obviously, marriage does not suit you, my poor George.
Your poor George is telling you to go to hell.
Oh, Philip, do you hear that? Say
Nag,
something.
a nagging bitch, that's all you are. All you care about is your gossip, your nag, chitter-chat. That's your only aim in life.
Poor George. It was bound to end like this. He's gone completely off his rocker because of that tart.
Say that again.
Tart. She's a tart. One has only to look at you to see that she'd go to bed with anything in trousers.
The tart, as you call her, happens to be my wife. Now take your bloody filthy insinuations and get the hell out of my... Fortress. Ha ha! Fortress. Get out, get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out.
Your painting is extremely interesting. Really, I like it very much.
Delighted to have made your acquaintance.
Yeah.
Cul-de-sac is perhaps Polanski's best work so far. It elaborates earlier themes with an added richness and control. It centers around an unconventional couple, a retired businessman and his young French wife, living in their bizarre home at Lindisfarne, Northumberland. At the beginning of the film, their curious relationship is disturbed by the even more curious arrival of a stray American gangster.
Is anybody there?
Yes, me. Dickie. I took the liberty of using the phone because Albert and me are having a little trouble.
Trouble? Trouble or not, you have very strange manners. One doesn't usually burst in on people without warning, especially at this hour.
One doesn't choose the time. One gets into trouble.
Actually, I don't know what prevents me calling the police.
I told you, Albert and me are having some trouble. Get it? Little fairy.
Polanski's apparent belief is that in any human relationship, the question arises of who is to dominate it. The grotesque and cruel games that his characters play in a bizarre setting indicate a pessimistic view of the human condition. But in Cul-de-sac, the sophistication and numerous sexual innuendos do not obliterate the innocence and vulnerability of the characters. Polanski's pessimism is countered by the vitality and richness of the visual images and an almost childlike sense of fun. These latter qualities are very apparent in his latest film, The Vampire Killers, a broad burlesque on the conventions of the horror film.
Well, after the films like, Knife in the Water, Cul-de-sac, Repulsion, which are very sort of strict and black and white, and, with this sort of close atmosphere, I felt suddenly like doing something entirely different,
Yes.
First comedy, second color, and then it's rather, it's also a lot of atmosphere in it, of these castles and inns, but it's just the opposite of everything I was doing. Yet it joins my idea. I mean, it joins the thing which I like in the cinema. I like to go and see the scary movie, or, I like also going to Disneyland
Yes.
or Battersea, and take this, how do we call it, the
But-
frightening thing.